Translator, Reverie, Editor Henyi. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was seized by dread. None knew that the Thousand Corpse sect had long since set its covetous gaze upon this land, several thousand years ago, secretly laying down sinister formations to draw together the innumerable corpses buried beneath the earth, melding them into a single supreme corpse king. One had to understand that beneath this soil were not only the fallen of the great battle 10 millennia past, here also lay the mighty elites of 20 millennia ago, 30 millennia ago, even 100 millennia ago. The 5 great sects merely reenacted this calamity once every 10,000 years. The Restore Heaven Academy, for instance, had stood here 10 millennia ago, and even 100 millennia ago it had been erected upon this ground. Only in those distant ages, Nine Dragons Mountain had not yet borne the name Nine Dragons Mountain. This place had forever been one of the 3 supreme battlefields where the 5 great divine sects fought their final war against the martial artists of the vast lands. Across several hundred millennia, how many towering elites had fallen and been buried here? Most, naturally, had decayed into dust and ash. Yet the skeletal remains of elites from the most recent 100 millennia were largely preserved. Though some were grievously shattered, there was still no comparison to the sheer number of corpses amassed here. Tens of thousands of elite corpses fused into one, combined with the Thousand Corpse sect's most treasured relic, the water of the pond of the underworld, which could even rekindle fragments of martial intent within certain remains. Just how terrifying would such a corpse king become? You have ruled this world for far too many years. It is time to yield it to us, the 9th Underworld King said in a dull, lifeless tone. Utter nonsense! Azure Phoenix, Divine Empress, snorted coldly. She knew well that the Thousand Corpse sect had forged this corpse king to contend against the elites descending from the divine plane. True gods, at crucial moments, could erupt with divine might, unleashing attacks that even shattering Void Tier opponents could not withstand. Yet if this corpse king were allowed to continue its evolution, it would truly ascend to the realm of gods and stand against them. In truth, it need not even battle a god outright. So long as it could withstand a single strike of divine power, the god would be rejected and expelled by the laws of this world. To descend from the god realm required a staggering price, and only a handful could be sent down at a time. The reason for refining all living beings once every 10 millennia was twofold. First, the vast lands required time to recover, allowing martial arts and the environment to once more reach their zenith. Second, the cost of dispatching gods was immense. It could only be done once every 10 millennia. To attempt it more frequently would wound even the 5 great divine sects to the core. Hey, then Divine Empress, why not simply stand aside and watch? The 9th Underworld King replied indifferently. Azure Phoenix, Divine Empress sneered. Do not forget, the Restore Heaven Academy was not founded by my sect alone. Did you truly believe this Empress was the only shattering Void Tier guarding this place? 9th Underworld King, it seems your cultivation has advanced yet again. As her words faded, a man clad in white descended into the heavens. Behind him unfurled a radiant sword map, blazing with resplendent light. Sword King! The 9th Underworld King's pupils shrank. Evidently, it was this man he feared more. Ling Han witnessed everything and found it strange. According to Fengpo Yun's intelligence, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress had already reached the consummate 9th layer of the shattering Void Tier. The Sword King, by contrast, clearly had not yet attained the 9th layer. Moreover, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress possessed the true Phoenix bloodline. No matter how one calculated it, she should have been the stronger of the two. Yet from the 9th Underworld King's expression, his wariness toward the Sword King was deeper still, an astonishing sight. Sword King clasped his hands behind his back, expression tranquil. He said to Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, Divine Empress, shall I first assist you in slaying this fiend, or strike down that Corpse King? Corpse King! Azure Phoenix Divine Empress answered without hesitation. With a piercing phoenix cry, the Heavenly Phoenix returned, merging once more into the Heavenly Phoenix Sword. With the tool spirit restored, this 10th tier spirit tool returned to its peak state. Very well, Sword King replied flatly, as though discussing a trivial matter. He joined his fingers into a sword form and pointed toward the Corpse King. A terrifying spectacle unfolded. From his fingertips burst forth a sword ray exceeding 600 meters in length, cleaving down toward the Corpse King. The length of a sword ray determined its might. He wielded only his fingers to unleash sword chi. Yet it was even more dreadful than Azure Phoenix Divine Empress wielding a 10th tier spirit tool. No wonder he bore the title Sword King. The Corpse King raised its arms before its chest, forcibly receiving the sword ray head-on. Pooh! A deep sword scar was carved instantly into its arms. Its entire body was driven backward, plowing 2 profound trenches into the earth. The Corpse King roared in fury, yet it did not dare charge forward to engage. This left many in stunned disbelief. The Sword King had actually terrified the Corpse King. Who could have imagined such a thing? The 9th Underworld King coughed softly. Since the 2 of you have revealed yourselves, this lord must grow somewhat more serious. He inhaled deeply and released a strange cry. At once, 7 ancient caskets slid in from afar. Peng, peng, peng. The lids burst open, and 7 corpse soldiers leapt forth. 9 eyes, 9 eyes, 9 eyes. Each one was a 9-eyed Corpse King. You shall entertain the Divine Empress. As for the Sword King, this lord will personally receive him. The 9th Underworld King lightly shook the demonic noise saber. Sword King, this lord has long heard that your attainments in the sword path have reached sword heart illumination. Coincidentally, this lord's mastery of the saber is not inferior. I have long wished to spar with you. Sword heart illumination. Ling Han's mind jolted with understanding. No wonder the Sword King commanded greater fear, despite his cultivation seemingly inferior to Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. He had reached the ultimate extreme upon the sword path, achieving not merely sword heart, but its pinnacle state. Sword heart illumination. Nothing beneath heaven could not be severed. Even soul spirits were not exempt. Your flesh was tough and invulnerable? No matter. I would simply cleave your soul, reducing you to a walking corpse. Ling Han felt a chill of fear. His physique rivaled rare metals, a tier above in toughness. Yet even were he to reach the shattering void tier, the Sword King could still extinguish his soul spirit with a single stroke. This was unquestionably an opponent none dared underestimate. The 9th Underworld King struck at once, allowing the Sword King no opportunity to assault the Corpse King again. The 7 9-eyed Corpse Kings likewise lunged toward Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. The 1,000 Corpse sect was truly formidable, though there stood only the 9th Underworld King. He could contend simultaneously against Azure Phoenix Divine Empress and the Sword King, buying the Corpse King precious time and space to evolve. Aang. The Corpse King's ferocity erupted. The water of the pond of the underworld surged within its body, driving a transformation at an astonishing pace. Yet this metamorphosis was agony beyond measure. Even a corpse soldier, bereft of sensation, could feel its torment. Its evolution had already endured for several thousand years. Not long ago, the infusion of the pond's water caused the process to leap forward violently. After its awakening, the transformation only accelerated further. Pa, pa, pa. The bones throughout its body crackled thunderously. Countless fragments of bone fell away. Its body shrank rapidly, yet its aura exploded upward without restraint. In but a short span, another eye opened upon its forehead. 12 eyes. Stronger still. Its metamorphosis had not yet concluded. Its body continued to contract, its power to swell. The 9th Underworld King threw back his head and laughed. The scheme the sect had laid for several thousand years was at last about to bear fruit. Once the water of the pond of the underworld was fully absorbed, the Corpse King would completely fuse with the 10,000 corpses, attaining no fewer than 15 eyes. At that time, its defensive power alone would be unrivaled beneath heaven. By then, its martial intent would awaken. Against Sword Heart illumination, it would possess extraordinary resistance. Even the Sword King would struggle to wound it. In this lifetime, the 1,000 Corpse sect was destined to rise. Editor, Henyi. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was locked in fierce combat against the 7 9-eyed Corpse Kings, her divine flames blazing like a phoenix descending upon the mortal realm. The Sword King crossed blades with the 9th Underworld King, sword intent surging like a boundless sea. And beneath them all, the 12-eyed Corpse King was in the midst of its transformation, a monstrous aura coiling and rising. The situation became exceedingly delicate. Should Azure Phoenix Divine Empress shatter the encirclement and turn to hold back the 9th Underworld King, the Sword King would gain the opening to annihilate the 12-eyed Corpse King, striking it directly with Sword Heart Illumination to cleave apart its soul spirit. Once deprived of its soul spirit, a Corpse King would be nothing more than a corpse soldier. No matter how terrifying its raw power, the threat it could pose would be sharply diminished. Yet, if they were stalled too long, granting the 12-eyed Corpse King time to complete its metamorphosis, advancing to 15 eyes, or perhaps to an even more dreadful height. Should it then enter the fray, it would be capable of suppressing both the Sword King and the Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. Already, quite a few onlookers began to flee. To remain and spectate such a battle was to gamble with one's life. If the Thousand Corpse sect emerged victorious, calamity would descend upon all under heaven. Ling Han alone remained composed. He still held the Black Tower as his final trump card, and regardless of how perilous the storm grew, he harbored no fear. Although neither faction could be called righteous, there was still time before the divine plane descended. He could yet found a nation, open the skies, and avert the coming catastrophe. But if the Thousand Corpse sect gained the upper hand, all living beings would at once be cast into unending misery. His resolve hardened. The sword in his grasp must now be turned against the Thousand Corpse sect. Yet every figure upon the battlefield was a being of the shattering void tier. Even if he rushed forward with reckless courage, he would be reduced to drifting ash. Could those skeletal remains be gathered to curse that colossal fiend to death? Ling Han's gaze fixed upon the 12-eyed Corpse King. Earlier, it had been wounded by Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, by the Heavenly Phoenix Tool Spirit, and by the Sword King, leaving scattered bone fragments strewn across the earth. With such an abundance, he refused to believe they could not curse that damned monstrosity into extinction. The difficulty, however, lay in how to retrieve them. The surroundings were saturated with the fluctuating aura of shattering void tier experts. Not to mention his current physique was merely at the deity transformation tier. Even if he stood at the heaven tier, he might still be unable to withstand the pressure at close range. Go wage your battle in the heavens. Ling Han urged silently. Only if these titans ascended to the skies and clashed there would he gain the opportunity to collect those white bones and curse that towering Corpse King to death. If this giant abomination did not perish, it would assuredly become a calamity beyond measure. Beast Snake King, why do you not step forth? Azure Phoenix Divine Empress suddenly cried out. Gaga, seeing you all fight with such fervor, this lord was reluctant to disturb the spectacle. Accompanied by an eerie laugh, an old man emerged soundlessly. His figure seemed slightly stooped, yet upon closer inspection he was not hunchbacked at all, but rather coiled and twisted like a serpent. Behind him loomed the shadow of a colossal snake, its pointed and flattened head emitting a sinister gleam. The Beast Snake King, Earth Dragon Sect's shattering void tier elite. Snake King, hold this old corpse at bay for me. I shall slay that Corpse King. The Sword King said calmly, the crux lay with the evolving Corpse King. If it truly reached 15 eyes, there would likely be no one present capable of ending its life. Its defenses would become impregnable. The Beast Snake King laughed thunderously. Very well. Leave this place to this lord. Though their relationship was far from harmonious, in opposing the Thousand Corpse sect, they now stood upon the same front. The Sword King immediately descended like a streak of light. The 9th Underworld King sought to obstruct him, but the Beast Snake King intervened without delay, striking with a palm. His arm transformed into a colossal python over 3,000 meters in length, coiling around the 9th Underworld King. Martial intent roared forth, vein-like patterns radiating along its scales, forcing the 9th Underworld King to fend it off first. At their level, none dared permit an opponent to strike freely. To do so would be to surrender one's life. The Sword King's form shot downward, and he was just about to seal the fingers of his right hand and unleash a slash when he abruptly halted midair, his expression turning severe. Sword King, what are you doing? Azure Phoenix Divine Empress shouted at once. "This lord restrains this old corpse for you not so you may wander about sightseeing." The Beast Snake King added with displeasure. "The ninth underworld." King's lips curved into a grim smile, as though victory were already within his grasp. The Thousand Corpse sect had plotted for several millennia, and had even recently infused the Corpse King with the waters of the Pond of the Underworld, one of their 3 most treasured relics. Having schemed so meticulously, how could they have failed to prepare for unforeseen crises? Indeed, they were thoroughly prepared. It was the 5 great sects who had been caught unawares, but what formidable foe had barred the Sword King's path? "Reveal yourself!" The Sword King turned toward a certain corner, his gaze sharp as a blade, piercing the void. As expected of the Sword King, I exposed but the faintest trace of killing intent, and you perceived me. A figure manifested from thin air, as though stepping forth from the very fabric of space. He seemed capable of concealing himself within the air itself, appearing without warning, eerie beyond measure. This person wore a cloak that wrapped him from head to toe. None could glimpse his appearance. Were it not for his masculine voice, even his gender would have remained uncertain. Yet even voice was no reliable measure, for masters of such cultivation could easily alter it at will. To have reached our realm, yet still lurk in shadows, how unsightly must your countenance be that you dare not show it to others? The Sword King said, his words edged with probing intent. The cloaked man paid no heed, instead responding in kind. "Correct. I am indeed unsightly. Best that none behold me." He made no move to attack, for his mission was to bar any who sought to strike the great Corpse King. So long as the Sword King refrained, he was content to remain at ease. The Sword King fixed him with an unwavering stare. This man's presence was subtle, almost indistinguishable, utterly ordinary, and it was precisely this ordinariness that rendered him troublesome. To return to a natural state, to become unfathomable. "Were you invited here by the Ninth Underworld King?" the Sword King asked. "That is so." The cloaked man inclined his head. His task was to delay, and thus he did not mind passing the time in idle conversation. "What benefit did the Ninth Underworld King promise you?" He gestured toward himself, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, and the Beast Snake King, a faint smile curving his lips, "can offer you double." Truly a stirring proposal. "Yet I fear you are unable to provide what I require," the cloaked man replied. "Speak it. Whether we can provide it or not is for us to decide." The Sword King answered with a smile. The cloaked man laughed heartily. "What a Sword King! Each word conceals a blade, seeking to draw out my identity." For experts of their realm, the treasures they sought were exceedingly rare. From such clues, one could easily deduce another's origin. Alas, even if I told you, you would never be able to guess. "Then why not say it?" the Sword King replied lightly. The cloaked man shrugged. "Attack, and you shall know." The Sword King regarded him steadily. After a long moment, a fierce battle spirit surged forth. With a flick of his right hand, a long sword materialized, and his entire aura began to soar. Though already terrifyingly powerful, he had seemed until now like a peerless heavenly blade resting within its sheath. At this instant, the blade was drawn. Radiance burst forth in all directions, sovereign over heaven and earth. The cloaked man remained unmoved, standing with hands clasped behind his back, demeanor supremely arrogant. The Sword King struck. Shoot, the long sword cleaved through the air, sword chi surging skyward. Pang, pang, pang. The stars strewn across the firmament shattered once more, fragments cascading down as a rain of meteors. Sword chi collided, and yet the cloaked man was strangely obliterated, dissolving into a field of mist that coiled and encircled the Sword King.